Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. This evening promised to be ordinary. Well, as ordinary as my friend Jessica's art show could be. Autumn in Brooklyn was always beautiful. A slight chill in the air, leaves rustling and streetlights casting a warm glow over the sidewalk. I walked toward the gallery anticipating some interesting conversations, a glass of wine, and maybe a few quirky characters. What I didn't expect was that this evening would mark the beginning of a very unusual story. Inside, the atmosphere was noisy and cozy. The spacious room with its brick walls showcased art, while the eccentric attire of the guests added to the eclectic vibe. There were girls with neon hair, guys in hats, and connoisseurs discussing color schemes with passion. I grabbed a glass of white wine and wandered among the paintings until I spotted him. He was sitting at the makeshift bar, calm, confident, as though the chaos around him didn't faze him in the slightest. He wore a dark blue shirt, slightly unbuttoned at the collar, with silver strands in his hair, and an expensive watch on his wrist. Definitely not a hipster, and certainly not someone ordinary. He was different, and of course I couldn't help but stare at him a little longer than I should have. And of course that's when my glass of wine slipped out of my hand. Great first impression, right? Is everything all right? His voice was deep, just a little husky. I quickly leaned over, grabbed the glass, and grinned, trying to play it off casually. Yeah, just unexpected, I said. Like many good things in life, he remarked, his tone easy, and then invited me to sit down. Well, how could I refuse? We started talking, and it turned out his name was Michael. He was a wine merchant, and he knew so many amusing stories about New York in the 90s that I couldn't help but listen, laughing along. His humor was subtle, and his voice had that quality that made you feel a little ticklish inside when he spoke. When I confessed that my favorite dinner was instant noodles, he laughed and said, "Okay, that needs to be fixed right away." And honestly, I didn't mind. We spent the rest of the evening laughing, debating the taste of Merlot, and discussing paintings, whose meanings I admitted I had a hard time understanding. Then suddenly he said, "I know a place that serves the best Bordeaux in town. Shall we?" That's when my heart did a little somersault, because I think this was the most interesting man I'd met in a while. I smiled. Why not? Michael drove me to a small French restaurant tucked away from the hustle of the city, hidden in the narrow streets. The street lights flickered softly outside, casting a gentle glow on the large windows. The air smelled of rain, cinnamon, vanilla, and the warm scent of autumn leaves. He helped me out of the car, his palm warm on my back, a touch that felt just a little warmer than the evening air. With one simple movement, a slight shiver ran through me, whether from anticipation, intrigue, or something else, I wasn't sure. Inside, the atmosphere was cozy. Vintage chandeliers cast a warm glow on dark wooden tables, and candles flickered in time with the soft French tunes floating lazily from the speakers. There was not a single random person here. Everyone seemed to be here to enjoy, savor, and feel. "They make an amazing duck confit here," Michael said, absently running his fingers along the edge of the wine list. I smiled, eager to see what else this evening had in store, head biting my lip. "Are you saying I don't know anything about high cuisine?" He looked up, grinned. "I'm saying I want to surprise you." And he did surprise. The Bordeaux he ordered was so rich and deep that after the first sip, I closed my eyes, listening to the aftertaste. And when I tasted the duck, soft, crispy, with a thick velvet sauce, I wanted to moan with pleasure. Consider me re-evaluating my life, I muttered, pushing my plate away and sipping my wine. Michael laughed. Oh, husky laugh. I liked his laugh. It was real. So my mission for the evening was accomplished. I looked at him over the glass. The candle light played on his cheekbones, his lips the corners of his eyes. His gaze was warm, a little lazy, like a man who enjoys the moment and is in no hurry to let it go. Not yet. I set my glass on the table and leaned forward. Slowly, tell me, why were you at that exhibition? He didn't look away. A tension hung between us thin as a silk thread. I was looking for something new or someone. My heart skipped a beat. We were both silent, but that silence seemed louder than any words. In that moment, I realized I was being drawn in. This man was not just an interesting conversation partner, not just a gallant gentleman, not just an evening well spent. He was awakening something in me, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to resist it. The week flew by like a single breath. Michael called the next day, his voice as warm as the wine from that restaurant we agreed to meet again. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was he? Why him? And most importantly, why was I so nervous about a man who could be my well? Let's face it, my father the evening of the meeting was chilly. I was standing in my driveway in the old jeans with the hole in the knee that I'd always thought were cute, but now suddenly seemed too plain. He drove up in his retro Corvette black shiny, like it had just come off a poster of classic American cars. And he himself, my God, he looked like he'd stepped off the cover of a successful men's magazine. Dark blue shirt, perfectly tailored jacket, the smell of expensive perfume that mingled with the evening air. "Are you ready?" he asked, getting out of the car and opening the door in front of me. I nodded, though everything inside was trembling. My inner voice was screaming, "Cinderella, you've definitely gone to the wrong ball." His apartment turned out to be an even bigger shock. It wasn't just a house. It was a museum. Vinyl records neatly lined up along the walls like soldiers in formation. A leather couch that probably cost as much as a year's salary at my coffee shop occupied the center of the living room. And in the middle of all this splendor stood an exercise machine. That's my tired friend. He joked, catching my eye. I laughed, but inside I still felt a little out of place. It seemed like every object in here had a story. And I was just a girl in jeans with a hole in my knee. Michael noticed my embarrassment and said softly, "You know, I don't collect things for the sake of the things themselves. They're memories like this vinyl right here." Here, he pulled a record from the stack. "This is the first album I bought when I turned 16. "And what album was that?" I asked, surprised at how easily he shared his stories. "The Doors' Riders on the Storm." I smiled. A dangerous choice for a teenager, I guess, he grinned. But back then I was a rebel now. I'm trying to be more organized. Organized. He was a real fanatic. I recognized it when he showed me his daily routine. 6 a.m. exercise, green smoothies, meditation work. Gym. When you're in your 50s, you start to realize that the body is an investment. If you don't take care of it now, it will be too late later. Then he started talking about his diet. Broccoli, salmon, quinoa, avocado. Sounds like a menu from a healthy lifestyle commercial. Interrupted, laughing. "What do you eat?" "Instant noodles. Pizza. Sometimes a salad if I'm lucky." He shook his head. But there was mockery in his eyes. "Well, I'm going to have to re-educate you." And he really started to do it the next morning when I woke up on his leather couch. We watched old movies late into the night. He handed me a glass of bright green liquid. "Celery smoothie. Drink." I took a sip and almost choked. "That's awesome. It's good for mood." He winked. By the end of the evening, I knew he went to the gym 3 times a week, slept on an orthopedic mattress, and even used special face masks. This man was without exaggeration a health god, but the best part began when he offered to teach me how to dance the twist. We stood in the kitchen. He turned on an old Chubby Checker record, and within minutes the whole house was filled with our laughter. The neighbors must have thought someone was abusing the pensioner, because half an hour later there was a knock at the door. "Police, open up," came a voice from behind the door. We froze and then started laughing even harder when the police saw us. They frowned and then laughed with us. "Well, at least someone's having fun," one of them said as they left. That night I realized that Michael was more than just a handsome man with an expensive watch and a vintage car. He was someone who could find joy in the little things, someone who could make an ordinary evening special. But the biggest discovery awaited me the following week. The next week flew by in a hurricane of emotions. We saw each other almost every day. Then at a contemporary art exhibition where he surprised me with his knowledge of abstract paintings. It's not just a stain. It's a metaphor for the chaos in the world. Then in a small French restaurant that became our second home. But it was his invitation that intrigued me most. I have a country house in the Hamptons. Why don't we go away for the weekend? I said yes, though. Inside, I was trembling with a mixture of anticipation and slight anxiety. What would be waiting for me? Their candles, wine, or something more? The drive to his house took about 2 hours. The Corvette sped down the highway and I stared out the window at the full scenery, feeling warmth in my stomach. Are you nervous? He asked, giving me a quick glance a little. I admit it. Don't worry about it. I just want to show you a place that means a lot to me. When we pulled up, I realized why he valued this house so much. It wasn't just a country cottage. It was history. A 2-story building with white shutters framed by tall maples that were already starting to put on their fall colors in the backyard. There was a terrace with wicker furniture and a fireplace. And beyond that, the vast ocean, the sound of it filling the air. This is amazing, I breathed out. Glad you like it. He smiled, helping me out of the car. The inside of the house was just as cozy as the outside, solid wooden beams, old photographs. On the walls, books scattered throughout the house. It seemed like every detail here held a piece of a soul. We spent the day walking along the coast, collecting seashells and talking about everything in the world. In the evening, he opened a bottle of wine that he said was older than me. This is a 1995 Bordeaux, he explained, pouring the ruby liquid into glasses. One of the best vintage bottles in my collection. I took a sip and the world around me seemed to freeze. It's incredible, I whispered. He grinned. See, sometimes it's worth it to take a risk and try something new. That night changed everything. When he took my hand and led me upstairs, I felt my heart start to beat faster. His bedroom was simple but elegant. A large bed with a wooden headboard. A window overlooking the ocean. A slight smell of freshness. When he took off his shirt, I almost gasped. This man definitely didn't fit any stereotypes about age. His body was taut, strong as if carved from marble, and his virtues, let's put it this way. If I was expecting a radio, I got a whole home theater system. Wow. I breathed out when noticed my surprise. What? He grinned. You think I eat broccoli just to be healthy? I laughed, but the laughter was quickly replaced by something else. Something hard to describe in words. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight was streaming through the curtains, and Michael was already exercising on the patio. He moved with such grace as if time had stopped. For him. Good morning, he said when he saw me. Good morning, I smiled, feeling a little awkward. How did you sleep? Fine. There's just one thing bothering me. What's that? Your neighbors in town were right. You really are a dangerous man. He laughed and walked over to me, putting his arm around my waist. You know what? I think that you could be dangerous too. And he was right. From that moment on, I realized that our relationship wasn't just a romance anymore. It was something deeper, stronger, almost primal. That the hardest part came when I decided to introduce him to my parents. When I told my parents that I was dating a man older than them, the reaction was loud. Mum nearly dropped her signature apple pie. And Dad, who is usually as calm as the ocean in the doldrums, suddenly started pacing around the living room in circles. Are you sure this isn't some kind of con man? Mum asked, adjusting her glasses, or our religious fanatic Dad added, crossing his arms over his chest. I sighed. Guys, he's just special. You'll see him and you'll understand. The next day, Michael arrived at their house in his Corvette. He looked impeccable, light sweater jeans, leather jacket. When he got out of the car, Dad, standing on the porch in his oil-stained shirt, raised an eyebrow. "Is that your future son-in-law?" He mumbled in my ear. "Dad, you promised to behave." I hissed. Michael stepped forward and held out his hand. "Michael, it's a pleasure, Dad." Shook it, but he couldn't resist. "So you're going to marry my daughter? You know you're only 2 years away from my age." Michael grinned. "Didn't you get married?" When you were her age, Dad froze, then suddenly laughed. "Okay, I like you. Let's show this car of yours." An hour later, they returned with pizza and a bottle of Coke. It turned out that Michael had not only told Dad about engines, but had also taught him how to corner properly. From then on, they started weekly calls to discuss classic cars. But my mom couldn't get over the shock for a long time. She asked a million questions. Does he have children? He's sure he's not married. What if he dies before you? That everything changed when Michael gave her an antique jewelry box for her birthday. Mum, who collected New York City magnets, cried at the gift for the first time in her life. "Even your father never gave her something like that." She sobbed. Michael had been her favorite ever since they cooked together. He taught her how to make a proper duck, and she gave him recipes for borscht for potency. But it wasn't that simple. When we went to his friends' parties, I felt like a granddaughter who'd slipped into a group of pensioners. His friends played bridge, discussed real estate prices, and listened to Chopin. I preferred TikTok and Billie Eilish. One day he tried to install TikTok on his phone at 58. "I'm learning how to shoot cozy stories," he said, squinting at the screen. I laughed. "Well, that's definitely not your format." "Why not?" He took offense. "I can have a lot of followers." "Sure, if you make a video on how to properly eat duck with fig sauce." He rolled his eyes, but he tried it. The video got 200 views. The first big fight was when I wanted to go to Coachella and he suggested the opera. "You know I can't stand classical music," I said. "And you know I can't stand crowds and bad sound." He countered. Finally, he surprised me by putting on a leather jacket and coming with me to a rock concert. When I saw him singing along to Metallic, I realized that this man was willing to change for me over time. I realized that our age difference was not a barrier but a challenge. We complemented each other. He taught me elegance and depth. I showed him how to live with ease and spontaneity. Now, when I think back on our story, I realize love knows no age. It only knows hearts. And yes, if someone tells you that you can't love a man older than your father, just smile. Because sometimes the most beautiful stories begin where others don't even dare to. Asterisk.